It was a crisp autumn morning when the royal household at Buckingham Palace began buzzing with anticipation. King Charles III had summoned an extraordinary meeting of the Most Noble Order of the Garter, a marathon council not convened since the Ascension Protocols of his own reign. As heraldic banners adorned the palace's courtyard exhibiting the storied arms and insignia of England's chivalric elite, speculation swirled that the 74-year-old monarch was preparing to unveil a slate of new monarchy reforms and peerage appointments. With the House of Windsor still reeling from successive PR debacles involving the Duke and Duchess of Sussex alongside a groundswell of Republican abolitionism, many pundits theorized Charles would take this opportunity to recast the entire royal family's insular reputation. The king himself shed little light on his ambitious agenda during an uncharacteristically warm opening preamble that April morn amid the Gothic splendor of the palace's crimson drawing room. Garbed in the distinctive blue velvet robe emblazoned with supple gold tassels that designated his status as the sovereign of the most ancient and noble order, Charles called the ritualistic conclave to order with a ceremonial striking of his robed arm across the bronze-fitted arm of his throne. Esteemed companions of the stable, wise counselors and loyal protectors of this blessed dominion, the newly minted monarch intoned with a wavering timbre that betrayed uneasiness. Though the scepter's inheritance has passed through many a storied reign before now, its abiding manifestation binding our hearts and histories remains the crown's immutable defense of tradition itself. While the gathered noblemen of the order puzzled over their liege's ambiguous phrasing, a sly grin gradually formed across Charles's weathered countenance. He proceeded to rise and produce a tightly bound leather cylinder case bearing the insignia of the College of Arms, the body responsible for supervising the granting of all new royal titles and coats of arms. In adherence to that eternal custom, it shall forever be this sovereign's abiding privilege to ennoble and elevate only the worthiest lineages into our ancestral legacy's next storied chapters, Charles proclaimed as he unfurled the ancient scroll with an air of ceremonial grandeur. Which brings this puissant council to the extraordinary matter of rectifying a most egregious oversight from my predecessors, the glaringly insufficient recognition of the House of Middleton. The pronouncement was immediately met with a descending hush and smattering of shock from the assembled elder statesmen and landed elite, most notably the Duke of Norfolk himself. The Duke serves dual roles as the hereditary Earl Marshal responsible for overseeing state ceremonies and as Greyfur, the ancient ceremonial representative of England's normative aristocracy. The aging patriarch later admitted to being initially stricken breathless by the sheer audacity of Charles's proposal to potentially bestow hereditary nobility upon the family dynasty of a one-time airport worker and matriarch of rural Berkshire gentry. As Greyfur and on behalf of all quarterings and houses gathered here today, I must object most strenuously to your Majesty's unveiled intent, the Duke blustered as a tinge of crimson indignation flooded his septuagenarian visage. The mere consideration of conferring hereditary rank upon the bloodline of a former member of the proletariat working class would represent nothing short of an institutional repudiation of the principle of aristocracy itself. A terse, uncomfortable silence then fell over the assembled noblemen as murmuring dissent rippled throughout the drawing room. Charles allowed the outbreak of consternation to swell for a spell before raising his scepter in a commanding motion demanding fealty. When the gathering ultimately fell into a begrudged quiet, the monarch cleared his throat to deliver an impassioned rebuttal. This esteemed sovereign comprehends full well the reservations and confusion now gripping this chamber. Indeed, it would require contextualizing the arc of my own journey to viscerally appreciate the transformative karmic role the Middletons of Bucklebury have played in this realm's living renaissance. You noble peers hold this convocation with abject deference to custom, yet fail to account how exceptional circumstance itself can hallow new traditions from roots we never foresaw possible. To illustrate his point, the king recounted the pivotal influence wielded by Michael and Carol Middleton in shaping the once wayward domestic life of the former Prince of Wales. How the middle-class entrepreneur couple gently imposed needed values of family unity, spousal fidelity, and selfless public stewardship upon their daughters' relationships with his own two sons, William and Harry. He reminded those present of how Carol's nurturing insistence on robust holiday celebrations helped underscore the significance of ritual and spectacle in uplifting the family's global image. But most pivotally, Charles reflected on the humbling role Michael Middleton singularly played in repairing his relationship with his sons amidst the darker personal nadirs, ranging from the scarring trauma of Princess Diana's death, his bitter divorce, and the unraveling of his own soured union to Camilla over her long-running affair with an aide. Middleton, the man Charles labeled a postmodern paterfamilias, was unequivocally credited with diagnosing the unresolved emotional traumas underpinning the sovereign's fragmented parenting as well as nurturing open lines of communication. Beyond mere lip service, Michael Middleton cultivated in me the empathetic capacity for not only understanding my own failures as an absentee father, but for repairing those bonds through daily emotional introspection. Charles mused in revealing rare flashes of vulnerability. All by exemplifying that most sublime yet unfamiliar model of patriarchal wisdom and masculine emotional intelligence utterly absent throughout the generational scars of my own upbringing by the House of Windsor. The king then proceeded to recount the harrowing circumstances shortly after his own coronation when Prince Harry had reached an emotional nadir over his forced ejection from royal life alongside relentless rebukes from the reigning Prince William. Convinced the trauma would push his once favored younger son into a point of life-threatening crisis, Charles credited Middleton's level-headed counsel with salvaging the entire family by masterfully negotiating a summit at RAF Breise Norton that brought all sides back from the precipice of cataclysm. I bestowed upon Michael full authority for brokering temporary passage for the Sussexes back onto sovereign soil, knowing he maintained the peerless credibility and level-headedness for facilitating lasting rapprochement. Though circumstances still remain fraught in the aftermath, I can state with absolute certainty that Michael single-handedly prevented this clan from permanent collapse and civic unrest, Charles solemnly reflected. For that alone, by my own belief, he deserves to permanently be acknowledged as a sustaining pillar of this realm's dynastic vigor. As the Garter Assembly remained in hushed reverie digesting the poignant disclosures, Charles then turned his remarks back toward the personal nurturing received through 5+ decades of mentoring and bonding with the Middleton family patriarch. He detailed how Michael's aviation expertise and gritty military perspective from serving as a former RAF pilot continually grounded the impulsive prince's public affairs and boosted morale during times of strife. Moreover, Charles cited the rustic simplicity and family-centric atmosphere of the Middleton family's Bucklebury estate as providing a wellspring of respite whenever the ornate excess and gilded cages of palace life became too overwhelmingly oppressive. Without ever denigrating the sumptuous grandeur of these ancestral walls, there nevertheless resides a charming humility and inclusiveness within the cottages and rural routines of the Middleton ancestral homestead. A soulful return to the humbler roots of country nobility that, in an ironic twist, proved a desperately needed tonic to the sovereign insularity poisoning the heart of my own bloodline across generations. So one might say Michael and the entire Middleton clan saved not just this family, but the enduring spirit of the crown itself. In a clear signal of utmost sincere esteem, the king then rose from his throne and descended toward Michael Middleton, who had taken a seat in the rear of the drawing room out of customary deference to the proceedings. Charles stood proudly beside the unassuming patriarch and handed him both the royal scepter and a resplendent scroll fastened with ceremonial ribbon representing his new station. In an unorthodox flourish, Charles then respectfully inclined his head to await Middleton's symbolic grasping of the sacred instruments of nobility. By this solemn sovereign act, I hereby rechristen the head of the most noble house of